So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fourth program of the day here at NY Wintercon's Panel Room. Thank you. I'm Captain Zork, and this panel I call Captain Marvel Culture, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Captain Marvel, all of them. Okay, who here has heard the name Captain Marvel? Okay. Who here can think of at least one Captain Marvel? Who can think of two? Who can think of three? Who can think of four? Who can think of five? Okay, you're stalled out at five. Good. Then all of you should be happy to be here because I'm going to see if I can get through 21 Captain Marvels. If anybody wants to take out a picture and start taking out a piece of paper and start taking notes, do so now. So, everybody knows that, Big Bang, 14 billion years, stars, planets, Earth, life, cave paintings, then Egyptian hieroglyphs, Bayeux tapestry, the printing press, then you got illustrations in sequential order, broadsheet cartoons, political cartoons that established the concept of word balloons, then essentially sequential art, newspaper strips, Brownie's Yellow Kid, newspaper strips gathered into collections called comic books. Then eventually by the 1930s, somebody got the idea to put a 10-cent sticker on a comic book and put it at a newsstand. And then somebody got the idea of making an all-original comic book of a single subject with ads, and that was Major Wheeler Nicholson. And that was Detective Comics #1. And that was the beginning of DC Comics. Yes? I don't have time. Okay? We'll open it up for questions later, but there's a lot of history here, so I'm going to have to compress a little and leave some things out. So, Detective Comics exists for a while. A couple of Jewish kids called Siegel and Schuster from Cleveland created this character named Superman and were shopping him around, and they eventually got to Detective Comics and they published him in Action Comics #1 in 1938. And it is generally acknowledged that he was the first superhero as we know him today. Secret identity, superpowers, saves the world every now and again. Next thing you know, you got more superheroes. The Flame, the Arrow, you got Batman, you got all these other superheroes going on. Now, meanwhile, out in Minnesota, another former military man named Wilford H. Captain Billy Fawcett in 1919 published a little pamphlet called Captain Billy's Whiz Bang, which you may have heard referred to anachronistically in the musical The Music Man. This was a pamphlet of jokes and patriotic writings that men would enjoy more than pretty much anyone else, and he gave them all to and he published it for his veteran friends in the hospitals. And somewhere somebody thought, let's just print up a whole bunch and give them newsstands. And they sold out. And that was the beginning of Fawcett Publications, which grew up to become a large and diversified publishing empire, including magazines such as Family Circle and Mechanics Illustrated and movie star magazines, True Confession magazines. They were really big. They had a lot of money. Superstars came to his resort out in Minnesota. They got themselves an office in New York City, and Captain Billy's son, Roscoe Fawcett, noticed the popularity of superheroes. And he said, you know what? We ought to get into that racket. So he selected a couple of editors, and they selected a staff writer named Bill Parker and a staff artist named C.C. Beck, Charles Clarence Beck, and they were given the assignment, give me a Superman, but make his secret identity a 10 to 12-year-old boy, not a grown man. Because research had shown that most comic book fans were 10 to 12-year-old boys. And so, Bill Parker got to work and he thought, let's make a team of 6 superheroes, each with a different superpower. And they're, too busy, just one superhero. Okay, one superhero with 6 superpowers. And so he came up with the idea of a boy named Billy Batson. Now, quick plug here. These little pamphlets I got behind me are actually telling the same story that I'm telling, only with more words and pictures. And they're available for $5 each, or 2 for $8. And this little half pamphlet is only $2. So in here, you'll actually see pictures of the little orphan, Billy Batson, selling newspapers outside a subway station when a tall stranger in a dark coat says, "Why aren't you home in bed, son?" "I have no home. I sleep in the subway. It's warm there." "Come with me." And the last time it was ever a good idea to follow a tall stranger in a dark coat into the subway, Billy Batson did. He gets in some weird sort of decorated subway car, takes him to a tunnel. He walks down past the 7 deadly enemies of man, who are not exactly the same as the 7 deadly sins, but were obviously meant to represent them. And at the end of the tunnel is an old man with a long white beard and long white hair and a bald head on a throne with a globe on this side, an incense burner next to it, and a big book over here. And he says, "I am Shazam. For thousands of years I have fought evil, and you, Billy Batson, because you are pure of heart, shall take on the struggle, shall carry on from me. Speak my name." And by the way, who here can tell me what Shazam means? What does it stand for? Yeah. Exactly, and each of those ancient heroes, gods, demigods, and a Hebrew king represent a different power that Shazam used to fight evil. Solomon was wisdom, Hercules strength, Atlas stamina, Zeus was power, Achilles was courage, and Mercury was speed. When Billy Batson says, "Shazam!" Okay, everybody say it with me. 1, 2, 3. Shazam! Damn. Keep on trying that, but anyway. So he says that, and boom, he turns into this hero with a red military-inspired uniform, a little cape, and his name is Captain Thunder. But I thought this was a talk about Captain Marvel. Wait for it. Okay, yeah, he thought it was Captain Thunder because he got the lightning bolt thing going down. He got a lightning bolt on his chest. But one of the editors didn't like it. Maybe more than one of the editors didn't like it. And so they put their heads together and they came up with a different name. I'll get to that different name. They figured they would publish this guy in a comic book called Flash Comics. They created a little ash can that's like a disposable thing, just used to secure copyright or trademark kind of stuff. And sometimes it's used for solicitations. And that first ash can called Flash Comics, then they found out that All American Comics, which was a sister company to Detective, already had a Flash Comics. Okay, we'll call it Thrill Comics. Somebody else had a Thrilling Comics. So, okay, Captain Billy's Whiz Bang Whiz Comics. Yes, that's it. It's a captain. His alter ego is Billy. Bang goes the thunder, and it's Whiz Comics. All right. And fortunately, Beavis and Butthead didn't exist, so no one could say, he said Whiz. So Whiz Comics was a big hit, and it came out with issue number 2. It's assumed that issue number 1 was the ash can. Cover dated February 1940, which means it probably hit the stands in December 1939. And the hero was named Captain Mar-vell. The artist Pete Costanza had come up with Captain Marvelous, but they thought that was too long, so they called it Captain Mar-vell. And yes, it was a hit. It was so popular that they had to give him his own comic book, Captain Mar-vell Adventures. And the first issue of which was written and drawn by Simon and Kirby, who had gotten a hotel room and were doing that on the off hours while they were at Marvel doing whatever Marvel was called at the time, Timey doing Captain America. It was so popular that they created a team of Marvels. The first was the Lieutenant Marvels, 3 kids named Billy Batson, a hillbilly, a kid from Brooklyn who was Fat Billy, and a cowboy, Tall Billy. And when they all say Shazam at the same time, they're Captain Marvel and the 3 Lieutenant Marvels, the first superhero team in history. They kind of fizzled away, but the next thing you knew, you had a Captain Marvel Jr. Captain Marvel was battling Captain Nazi. Yes, Captain Nazi. Knocked him into a body of water. There was a rowboat, a little boy, grandfather. Captain Nazi knocks him into the water. Grandfather dies. The boy is still alive, but he's going to die soon. Captain Marvel takes in front of Shazam. Shazam says, What will come to pass will come to pass. I cannot change what will come to pass, but you can give him a big portion of the power I gave to you. The boy wakes up. It's Captain Marvel. Crack through! He becomes Captain Marvel Jr. Next thing you know, Billy Batson's got a twin sister. She says Shazam, becomes Mary Marvel, and unlike many different female superheroes at the time, she wasn't a sexy, scantily clad heroine. She was actually meant to look kind of like Judy Garland, where her beauty would inspire affection rather than lust. Oh, and by the way, Captain Marvel was modeled after Fred McMurray, the actor. And that's why in a movie, a later movie, I forget what it's called, there is a dream sequence that has Fred McMurray as a superhero. You can find it on YouTube. So this is all really popular, and the kids are eating it up. And Republic Pictures, oh yeah, there was even a Hoppy the Marvel Bunny and Fawcett Funny Animals. And an Uncle Marvel, who was a fraud, but everybody pretended he had superpowers. He just, oh, my Shazam Bago's acted up. Can you mind if, can you carry me, Captain Marvel, as we fly across the ocean? Yeah. What's that? Yeah, we love Uncle Dudley. But then Republic Pictures decided, you know what? Movie serials have been losing popularity for various reasons. Then somebody made Undersea Kingdom with Gene Autry, and then somebody licensed Flash Gordon and made it with Buster Crabbe, and boom, movie serials were popular again. So Republic looked at another comic book property, Superman, never closed the deal, so they went to the next best, or next better, depending upon your point of view, thing, Captain Marvel, and the Adventures of Captain Marvel serial. And that's often considered to be one of the best motion picture serials ever made, and until recently, possibly even the best superhero movie ever made. All the actors there were like contract actors, but who have fascinating stories that I touch on in this little book here. Anywho, Detective took note because Captain Marvel was outselling Superman. And Detective had already sued out of existence a Wonder Man, that was a direct ripoff, had already threatened to sue Fawcett for their character Master Man, which was a direct spoof. But now, and Fawcett had stopped with the Master Man, but now they were going after Fawcett's big gun. So, Fawcett, a wealthy and successful and diversified publishing house, fought back. The case was original, and they also sued Republic. The case was filed in 1941, but for some silly reason, depositions didn't begin until 1947. In the meantime, Captain Marvel is building a bigger and bigger legacy. Bill Parker was drafted into the Army early on and never went back to comic books. And one funny thing about Bill Parker and C.C. Beck, you know the stories about all the superheroes were like these young, starving Jewish writers and artists who were trying to make a living and break into comics? Jack Kirby, Joe Simon, Siegel, Schuster, Bob Kane, so forth. This wasn't the case here. These were two Gentiles in Minnesota with a regular job, about 30 years old, working for a magazine who were told, hey, give us a superhero. So all these tragedies about superheroes being stolen from their creators, which are all valid and legitimate tragedies and should be taken seriously, kind of doesn't apply in quite the same way here. They were working for a company, and that was what the assignment they were given. And so that's another thing that makes Captain Marvel unique. Well, anywho, this guy named Otto Binder. Who's ever heard of iRobot? Okay, who ever knew that there was an iRobot before Isaac Asimov wrote iRobot? The title iRobot was given to the story that Isaac Asimov wrote, but Otto Binder had written the original Adam Link iRobot story, the one that was in, not Twilight Zone, what's the other thing? Outer Limits episode with Leonard Nimoy. And it was also in an EC comic. It's been covered and redone a couple of times. That was the original iRobot. The guy who wrote that was looking for work one day. He had a friend, worked for Fawcett. Next thing you know, he's writing Captain Marvel, and over 50% of the Captain Marvel, Mary Marvel, Captain Marvel Jr., and Marvel family stories that were written for Fawcett were written by him. Otto Binder later went on to write for DC and created Supergirl and Crypto and the bottle planet of Kandor, the bottle city of Kandor. And some people speculate that the sense of humor he brought to Superman in the 50s and 60s was basically what he would have brought if Captain Marvel had continued, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Captain Marvel had a sense of humor. There was a whimsical nature to him. His best friend was a talking tiger, who was actually a stand-in for an everyman who actually battled against racial prejudice sometime when they said, we don't want tigers moving into our neighborhood. This is a restricted neighborhood, see? We don't know what this undesirable person will bring to our town. They got a collection, they got a protection committee with pointy hoods that accidentally set the town on fire. Talkie Tawny, the talking tiger, helped put the fire out, and then now he's a jolly good fellow. But the point is, when you've got a non-human to stand in, some people find it easier to identify with. Just a little thing that I go over, and one of the many social issues that were covered by Captain Marvel in those comics. But let's move on because we're running out of time. We're not running out, but time is ticking. So, here's what the Detective Comics case was. By the time it actually came to court, Detective was called National Publications. National said, Captain Marvel is too much like Superman. It's a ripoff. Copyright infringement. Oh yeah, and they're directly copying stories. Now it's true. There were some Captain Marvel stories and pictures that were direct copies of Superman stories and pictures. But there were some going the other way as well. Some Supermans that were copies of Captain Marvel's. You can look, you can find them. In pictures, that's like, yeah, this came first, that came second. Fawcett's defense. Number one, Captain Marvel is different enough from Superman. Number two, on a newspaper strip on the McClure Syndicate, they didn't put the copyright notice in right. That constitutes abandonment, so it doesn't matter. Superman's public domain now. First level of the court said, Judge Abelhand said, it doesn't matter if he's too much like Superman because, yes, copyright abandonment, of course National's going to appeal. Judge Learned Hand wrote past, the brother of Abelhand, I'm not making these names up, came up with the next decision, and the next decision was, with these silly pictures, nobody cares about the subtle details between one superhero. He actually said silly pictures. Nobody cares about the pictures, the subtle differences between one superhero and another. So saying one's different from another doesn't validate copying, but Fawcett's not pretending to be National. Captain Marvel's not pretending to be Superman, so it's not a violation of copyright. Though the McClure forgetting to put the copyright notice in is not a clear intention of abandonment, so Superman still has the copyright, and yes, there was copying. It came out in court. So, damages. National, you find every example that Fawcett copied a Superman story. Got that? Now it's 1953. Superheroes were really popular in World War II. They were battling Nazis and Japanese and Italians and all that. They were bad guys back then. We're all friends now. After World War II, what, bank robbers, muggers, people stealing candies from babies? What do you need superpowers to do that with? So superheroes declined in popularity, and instead what grew in popularity was war, western, science fiction, horror, crime, funny animals, romance, teen comics, and stuff like that. But even overall, comic sales were sinking. A sinking tide lowers all ships, to reverse that old expression. So Fawcett, being a successful and diversified publishing company, said, you know what? Heck with it. DC, you win. Here's $400,000. We'll shut down Captain Marvel, go away. DC says, like, okay. And that was the last anybody would ever see of Captain Marvel, so they thought. All right, so just a couple of years later, does anybody here own a Shazam shirt? Anybody here? No? No one? All right, well, I do. I actually own more than one. Just the logo, just the lightning bolt. And you want to know how many times I walk down the street and people say, "The Flash!" I'll just say many, okay? Carmine Infantino told me, and he told Arlen Schumer, who wrote it in his book, and I had to include it in mine, that he was a big fan of Captain Marvel, and so he created a character named Captain Whiz, and his enemies would be the colors of evil. And in 1950, it's in here somewhere, 1956, the publisher of DC Comics told Robert Kanigher and Carmine Infantino, let's try to do Flash a new way. Let's try to reboot restart the whole superhero thing. And so Carmine Infantino claims I just dusted off my design for Captain Whiz, the Colors of Evil, and that was the Flash and his Rogues Gallery. Now, other people say that it wasn't quite like that, but still, there's no denying that yes, the Flash looks a lot like this, right? Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Okay, so Captain Marvel started the Silver Age, maybe, sort of. But so Silver Age happens, Justice League happens. Justice League is a hit. Martin Goodman's playing golf with someone from DC Comics, Martin Goodman, the publisher of Marvel, and he says, you know what? I hear tell, or no, the publisher of DC Comics says, you know, my superhero books are doing really great. And so Martin Goodman rushes back to the office or picks up the phone or whatever they did back then and says, hey Stan Lee, who by this time in history was the only regular employee of Marvel Comics for reasons too complicated to get into right now, says, hey Stan, let's do superheroes. Give me a superhero team. And Stan Lee, if you've ever read an actual biography of him, is a busy guy. He was doing all kinds of things. He was thinking of moving on. His wife Joni says, hey Stan, you've been wanting to do superheroes differently, right? Just do it. What's the worst that can happen? If bombs you were going to leave anyway, right? Hey, oh, by the way, that there fella is a science fiction writer who's going to be involved in the Androids versus Zombies panel, which shall follow this one. Okay, so, where were we? Oh yeah, so Stan creates, who can tell me? Fantastic Four, absolutely. Not a direct copy of the Challengers of the Unknown. And of course, I'll let other people debate how much of the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and Doctor Strange and Iron Man and Thor and all the rest of the Marvel Universe was Stan, and how much was Jack and Steve and Don Heck and everybody else. That's not the point here. The point here is that comic books take another leap up in popularity. It's the pop art era of comics. Next thing you know, there's a Broadway musical. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman. There's a TV show, it's Batman. Next thing you know, Archie Comics has superheroes. Everybody's coming out with superheroes. And who's ever heard the name Myron Fass? Okay, you ever seen like those one-shot magazines, those schlocky magazines that are like, aliens among us, and have like a bunch of file photos about aliens and some schlocky, some hacky articles about aliens or UFOs or nuclear war. You ever seen anything like that? Myron Fass published a lot of those. He had done some comics in the 40s. His designer, his graphic designer was Carl Burgos. Who's heard of Carl Burgos? Who's heard of the Human Torch? Who knows the Golden Age Human Torch, the original one? All right, he was an android, right?
I thought it was made by, like Captain America.
The original Human Torch was an android, and the creator of the character was named Carl Burgos. And Carl Burgos was the graphic designer for Myron Fass. And Myron Fass is looking at what can I rip off. I have no idea if that's what was in his mind, but when you see the comic come out, it's called Captain Marvel. Now either Fawcett never trademarked it, or they let the trademark lapse. It was perfectly okay for another comic book company to come up with a character named Captain Marvel, and inside it said, based on a character created by Carl Burgos, and this character was an android in a red suit. Yeah, here he is. You want to know what his power was? He could split his body parts. By saying split, his arms would fly off, his legs would fly off, his fingers would fly off, his head would fly off. So if I wanted to like hit you, I could just go say split, and my fist would go wham, bam, and come flying back when I said zam, split, zam. Get it? If that's not obvious enough, his best friend was a boy named Billy Baxter. If that's not enough, and he fought villains like the Ray and Elastic Man and the Bat, who he later had to change to the Ray, and Plastic Man, who he later had to change to Elastic Man, and Dr. Fate and Dr. Doom and other names that he obviously ripped off. And this alien, the interesting part of the robot, android, was that he was an alien from another planet that was dying because of like war and poisons in the air, sent to Earth to make sure that it didn't happen. Well, the stories were indifferently drawn. They're all pretty lame, kind of goofy, and every issue was a 25-cent action issue in an era of 12-cent comics, so they didn't sell very well, and they were lousy, and they bombed after 6 issues. But it would be very easy to say, Martin Goodman saw this and said, we're Marvel Comics, we ought to have a Captain Marvel, and that's what Roy Thomas thought for a long time. Until, and this may be the first time anyone outside of my room and anyone that Roy Thomas has personally talked to has heard this. TV people came to Stan Lee and said, we want to make a superhero TV show, and let's call him Captain Marvel, and it's 1967, let's have him be a spaceman. And so, we got Marvel Comics' first Captain Marvel, who was an alien from outer space called mar-vell, a captain in the Kree military, who was sent down to Earth to inspect Earthlings and determine whether or not they were worth leaving alive. And you can see them here, and he had this green and white outfit, and he could jump real high, and he had to drink a breathing potion. But fortunately, for him anyway, when he landed, the ray beam that sent him to Earth happened to destroy a Piper Cub, a little one-man flying plane, and in it was a guy named Dr. Walter Lawson, who conveniently happens to look exactly like me, says Captain Mar-vell. So, he puts on a suit, and he looks at, well, he's going over to so, disguised as mild-mannered Dr. Walter Lawson, Captain Mar-vell works undercover in Cape Canaveral, so that way he can, which is good, because he can see the level of human Earth space technology. And, by the way, that was Stan Lee who wrote that, Gene Colan drew it, second appearance, Roy Thomas wrote it, and figured, I'm going to give the cape a female head of security and name her Carol Danvers. Okay, now let's get a few things straight right off the bat. Roy Thomas insists that he does not know where he got the idea for Carol Danvers, but yes, over in DC Comics, Linda Lee Danvers was Supergirl. But this was 1967, and the first appearance of Ms. Marvel was 1977. No, there was not an overarching story plot that would lead to Ms. Marvel. Because Roy Thomas was off the book after a reasonable interval. The stories were just a series of monsters of the week, shark jumping every other month. Until finally he was used as a pawn in Kree politics until they changed his costume and to this thing, which is not Star-Lord. Captain Marvel, okay? Notice the blue on the shoulders. Star-Lord does not have blue on the shoulders of his leather jacket. Notice the points on the bottom of the star. The Ravagers logo does not have points on the bottom of their logo. This is not Star-Lord. Okay, sorry. All right. At one convention, I was able to get a guy with a Flash shirt, a guy with a Flash Gordon shirt, and a Star-Lord cosplayer and me to line them all up so I could explain to everybody the difference. Anyway, moving right along. So Roy Thomas got back on the Captain Marvel thing and decided, I've always loved the original Captain Marvel. I want to try to do a Billy Batson concept, but with a science fiction, not a fantasy thing. Now I'm just gonna, where's my water bottle? Is there a water bottle over mine over there? Thank you. Oh, talk is thirsty work. Is anybody having a good time yet?
Yeah.
Is anybody learning anything they didn't know before?
Yeah.
Okay, so So I'm just going to go back to one thing, dangers of research on the internet. Who ever heard that they changed the name of Captain Thunder because there was a Captain Johnny Thunder in a Jungle comic in 1940? No one. Okay. Then you don't spend enough time on the internet. Besides which, it's not true. The earliest I found of that story was a website from 2012. I've talked to Jim Steranko, who interviewed the people from Fawcett for his history of comics that he published in 1974, and no, Captain Johnny Thunder from Jungle Comics, cover dated January 1940, never came up, and besides which, there wouldn't have been enough time to change the name and everything, so no, that was not the reason. It was just because, and also the editor himself said in court, I hated the name. It was my idea to change it. Ralph Daig, I think that editor was. So, back forward. Mar-vell with a Billy Batson. Who's ever heard of Rick Jones? Okay. Who's ever heard of Snapper Car from the Justice League? Rick Jones was a ripoff of Snapper Car. Now, Rick Jones found a pair of negabands, these gold bracelets, put them on, and for some reason felt this urge to bang them together, and zap! He goes into the negative zone where, in his previous adventure, Captain mar-vell, had wound up. And mar-vell goes to Earth. So they basically switched atoms, very Shazam-like. Now here's a very important difference. In the original Fawcett comics, Captain Mar-vell and Billy Batson had different personalities, but shared memories. So Billy Batson might see a plane falling and he'd say, this is a job for Captain Mar-vell, Shazam! And then Captain Mar-vell would say, it's a good thing Billy said his word when he did, and he goes and stops the airplane. One time, Captain Mar-vell had a girlfriend, and Billy Batson and Captain Mar-vell had an argument. Darn it, Captain Mar-vell, you're driving me nuts. I gotta get some sleep. I gotta go to work in the morning. Shazam! Oh, Billy, you don't understand what it's like to be in love. It's the most wonderful thing you could imagine. Shazam! Yeah, but you're keeping me up all night. You're staying out. She's just a gold digger who wants you for your fame. Shazam! Oh, you're just jealous because you've never known what it's like to be in love. Give me a break. Shazam! Okay, that indicates shared memories, separate personalities. But aside from a little comedy like that, no psychological torment. This is a comic book. This is magic. Roy Thomas gets a hold of it. Damn it, Marv, I'm stuck here floating in the negative zone. Let me down to Earth. No, Rick, I have to stop this car that's about to go off to a cliff. You know, oh, all right, it's unfair of me to be on Earth. Roy Thomas superhero as martyr guilting. Okay, it's unfair for me. Here you go. Bang! And they would switch atoms. And so it was all about the debate, all about the psychological torture. They talked to each other in each other's heads. Times passed and Rick separated from Captain Mar-vell, joined back later. Captain Mar-vell was one of the key players in the Kree Skrull War. Meanwhile, for reasons that had absolutely nothing to do with anything that I have yet described, somebody at DC Comics said, you know, I love Captain Mar-vell. I wonder if we can get him, if we can get the rights to publish him. Carmine Infantino told me it was his idea. Mark Evanier will tell you it was Jack Kirby's idea, because that was when Jack Kirby started working for DC. Both Jack Kirby and Carmine Infantino are dead now. So, I just have to put both stories down. So I do. Anywho, for whatever reason, Carmine Infantino picked up the phone, called Fawcett, and said, what would it take to get the rights to Captain Mar-vell? And someone at Fawcett said, make me an offer, make us an offer. Frank, I mean, what else is Fawcett going to do? They can't make money off of them, they can't publish them, and if anybody else does, you know, DC is going to sue them like they sued Fawcett, so sure, that's actually a damn good idea for a successful, diversified publishing company that Fawcett was. Another internet rumor, Fawcett went bankrupt as a result of the lawsuit. They did not. They sold themselves for a very lot of money to CBS Publishing in 1979. Anywho, oh, they did publish one other comic book, Dennis the Menace, from the 50s to the 80s. But here was the trick. We've got, okay, great, we got the rights to publish Captain Marvel. I've loved Captain Marvel. But we can't put his name on the cover because Fawcett now secured the trademark after a little lawsuit with Myron Fass. So think. Well, we're going to have the whole Marvel family there. They all get the power from Shazam through saying that. I got it! Let's call the comic book with one magic word, Shazam! The original Captain Marvel. We'll pull a fast one. 11 months later, communications from the lawyers of Marvel Comics convinced them they couldn't get away with that fast one anymore. So, that's why you'll see on those early issues, it'll say the original Captain Marvel, but on later issues in Shazam, it'll say, with one magic word, Shazam, the world's mightiest mortal. And that is why, folks, DC cannot put the name Captain Marvel on the cover of a comic, on the box of a toy, or in the name of a motion, or the poster of a motion picture, which is why everybody who never bothered to crack open the comic book thought that this guy is named Shazam. And I'm just going to jump to the end of the story, but I'll get back again. Right before the New 52, Freddie Freeman, the original Captain Marvel, Shazam had died, Captain Marvel took to his throne, Freddie Freeman had to go through the trials of Shazam, and when he got the red suit, he was called Shazam. And Dan Didio said, at last we can have a hero with the same name as the title of the book. And if you go to the YouTube channel, Captain Marvel Culture, because that's what this is all about. We are living in a Captain Marvel culture, believe it or not. I had my cell phone here, and I said, Dan Didio, can I talk to you for a moment? And I say, so, the New 52 guy, he's called Shazam, right? Right. So, if this guy ever shows up again, what's he going to call? What's he going to be called? And he looks at me with the side eye, and he goes, and you can see it in the video, he goes, we're probably going to call him Shazam. But, he has not appeared in this guy has not appeared in a comic book called Shazam yet, so he's still Captain Marvel. His last appearance was in Team Up with Scooby-Doo. We'll get back there. Circle back. So we got two Captain Marvels. DC, the Fawcett DC Captain Marvel, because that storyline actually carried on from the original. They Dr. Savannah, Suspendium, etc. And we got Marvel's Captain Marvel. So let's move forward a little bit. Let's move forward to the early 1980s. Okay, by now, rise of independent comics, creator-owned comics, graphic novels. Marvel Comics produces its first graphic novel. They talk to Jim Starlin. He agrees to do The Death of Captain Marvel if they will publish his comic book, Dreadstar, in their new creator-owned comic series line called Epic Comics. Who remembers Epic Comics? Whoever read Dreadstar? Okay. Well, it was great. I loved it. But the point is, Death of Captain Marvel, Marvel's first Captain Marvel. So now, Marvel's first graphic novel, awesome story. Jim Starlin helped get over the deal with the death of his father through cancer. Oh, by the way, he created the most significant storyline of Captain Mar-vell by making him a cosmic space hippie with cosmic awareness. Don't have time to go into that now. So, Marvel Comics doesn't have a character to hold down the trademark. What's his name? Paul Levitz. His wife says, you know, Captain Marvel's not a gender-specific name, and we don't have a lot of female superheroes. You know what? It's 1982. So let's have a black female superhero. Call her Captain Marvel. Monica Rambeau. She was a harbor patrol officer running up against the glass ceiling. Glass ceiling, not racism, because her boss was black. They made a point of that. But she gets bathed in radiation from an exploding machine like everybody else who becomes a superhero, and has the power to turn herself into electromagnetic energy, otherwise known as light, or gamma rays, or radiation. And some Mexican security guard on the oil rig goes, El Capitan está maravilla, and it gets into the newspapers as Captain Marvel. She was a great character, and I actually think she was more of a feminist superhero than the first feminist superhero, who was Ms. Marvel, who was Carol Danvers. Carol Danvers was actually marketed as the feminist superhero, and yet she originally was, what do you call it when you're schizophrenic? Split personality. When she was Ms. Marvel, she didn't know that she was Carol Danvers and vice versa. And this was, according to Jerry Conway, symbolic of the feminist movement and the female identity of the time. And lots of people didn't take it seriously when she was wearing a bathing suit and an impractical scarf. But I'll get back to what happened to her later. Monica Rambeau was a competent professional. She was a great superhero, and unlike most other female superheroes, she didn't have a Ms. or Mrs. or Miss or a girl or woman or lady attached to her name. She wasn't a wife, a girlfriend, or a brother or a daughter of any other superhero, you know, so that takes her out of, well, she's not Wonder Woman, she's not Invisible Girl or Woman, she's not Lightning Lass, she's not Bullet Girl, she's not Supergirl, she is Captain Marvel. Great role model, I think. She becomes leader of the Avengers, but then somebody over at the in Marvel decides we want to bring back Captain America and make him the leader of the Avengers. But Paul Levitz is like, we have a black female superhero and you want her to lose her job? How's that going to look? The optics are not good here. They didn't use that expression back then, but so he quit the Avengers, in fact, over this. Since then, Monica Rambeau came up and down and showing up here and there in the Avengers, out of the Avengers. But I'll get back to what happened at Marvel Comics. We got 3 Captain Marvels, right? They start coming thick and fast now. 1986, the year that changed comics. So by the way, over in England, Alan, there was this thing called Marvel Man. When they ran out of Captain Marvel comics to reprint in England, the very next issue they had a rip-off character named Marvel Man, and nobody cared because it was in England. Lasted for about 10 years. In the early 80s, Alan Moore revived Marvel Man, but that didn't last very long. When Eclipse Comics acquired the character, DC Comics said you can't call, Marvel said you can't call him Marvel Man. And so they called him Miracle Man. So Miracle Man was the first postmodern superhero. The original superheroes were like cartoon characters, okay? I'm just going to say that. The modern superheroes were what Stan Lee created. They bickered, they quarreled, they had real problems. The postmodern characters, superheroes, are what's really going to happen if you have the power of a Superman and you're a bad guy. It wasn't pretty. Miracle Man number 15 is not a pretty sight. When the evil kid Miracle Man battles Miracle Man and what they do to London. That's postmodern comics, and that was the first postmodern comic, immediately followed, of course, by The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen. And meanwhile, all in 1986, Crisis on Infinite Earths. Do I have to explain Crisis on Infinite Earths to anyone? No? You all remember how all the multiverse became one universe? Yep. All right. You sure you know this? Okay. I'll just explain. You know what a multiverse is, right? Okay. DC had a multiverse, and the original Captain Marvel did not live on the same world as Superman and Batman, or the Golden Age Superman and Batman. He lived in Earth S, and there were other worlds like that. They had Crisis on Infinite Earths and rolled them all into one universe, and rebooted all the characters. That's why, before the New 52, Superman and Batman came out contemporarily, whereas Jay Garrick and Alan Scott were the Flash and the Green Lantern back in World War II. So they rebooted Captain Marvel and changed his character. Roy Thomas got the job to do this Captain Marvel. Him and Marv Wolfman are like the only 2 writers who have done more than one Captain Marvel. Anywho, in this one, this was the first appearance of which Captain Marvel had Billy Batson's brain. He's in the throne room with the old wizard. He says Shazam, and the next thing you know, he goes, "You made me old!" And he becomes a dark Avenger trying to get vengeance for the death of his parents. He lives in San Francisco. They died in a car wreck. All these changes. Me as a fanboy, I hated this. I don't want Captain Marvel to be a dark Avenger. I want it to be light, whimsical, funny, and have and be different from, and have a different mind from Billy Batson. And they had a plan for a 12-month series. You had 12 issues. The first one got redrawn 3 times because DC was never happy with it, but then they literally dropped the ball on it. Didn't do anything with it. But anyway, I count him as a different Captain Marvel. So we got 4. We're up to 4? All right. In the early 90s, about the time that Superman died, the boom and bust of comic books. People were buying comics, keeping them, thinking they'd pay through college. They were wrong. So, when they didn't read the comics, they didn't care about the comics, so they tried to sell the comics, and they couldn't sell the comics, so they stopped buying comics. But while that was happening, Marvel Comics had a thing. Every annual issue's got a new superhero, and one of them's going to be Legacy. Legacy is the cloned son of Mar-vell. His wife cloned him, and Legacy was this kid named genis-vell, who was a wastrel. He was like Prince Al. He liked hanging. He had superpowers, but he didn't know how to control them. He'd just like blast things out of the way. It was like, yeah, you can call me Genis if you're my bud. If you want to be my bud, give her purse back. Oh no, that was him. So Rick Jones brought him to Earth and called him Captain Marvel, and then Monica Rambeau goes, what? Hey. And so they have an adventure, and Genis redeems himself, and Monica Rambeau says, you're his son, you take the name, I'll call myself Photon, because that's really a more impressive superhero name than Captain Marvel. Anybody agree? I don't. Okay, so Monica Rambeau is Photon, and now we've got our 5th Captain Marvel, genis-vell. Meanwhile, back over in DC, Jerry Ordway pitches a new concept for Captain Marvel that became known as the power of Shazam. Started it again, but again with the Billy Batson in Captain Marvel's brain, rebooting the entire thing. I consider him another Captain Marvel. So we're up to 6? I'm up to 6? Okay. Let's see, how much time we got left? Things are coming thick and fast now. I got about 10 minutes here. genis-vell gets the cosmic awareness, but not the maturity to handle it. He goes nuts. He becomes a mad god. Rick Jones, and Eternity are hanging out, and Eternity hates being Eternity, so he decides to just destroy the universe. Then he gets bored, because there's nothing here. So why don't we just make a new universe? Oh, that'll change things up. What'll it be like? Well, work with what you know. Well, I know the previous universe, so genis-vell and Eternity create a whole new universe exactly like the old one, except in this new universe, genis-vell is not nuts. However, because he created this new universe, the nuts genis-vell, takes the place of the not nuts genis-vell who had been there. So, his mom is not dead, for one thing, and his mom cloned a daughter to Mar-vell, calling her phyla-vell. But they both recognize that this genis-vell is now nuts, so phyla-vell is going to be the new Captain Marvel, and tells genis-vell, you're not Captain Marvel anymore. So 7 Captain Marvels, this one being phyla-vell. Incidentally, genis-vell would later become the most tragic character in all of history, in all of comic books, because in a battle in the future against his son, he realizes the only way to defeat him is to go back and is to decide that when he gets older, marry Songbird, has a son that will later grow up to be this mad, evil person that will defeat him in battle. He's got to decide now that he's going to kill him in his bed. And as he makes that decision, in the future, his son starts saying, no, wait, Dad, I can change. You don't have to do this. Yes, genis-vell, Captain Marvel, killed his own son in his bed to prevent him from becoming an evil galactic dictator, and I cannot think of anything more tragic. But what happened? Where is genis-vell now? Baron Zemo tore him into pieces and threw him to the far corners of time and space before he even got a chance to marry Songbird, and that was in the pages of the new Thunderbirds. phyla-vell was Captain Marvel for a while, joined the Guardians of the Galaxy, then got the quantum bands and became the new Quasar. And here's a little thing I just want to touch on, LGBT things. phyla-vell turned out to be a lesbian, hooked up with Moondragon. Moondragon became a dragon, and so they were the hottest cross-species lesbian couple in comics. Not the only Captain Marvel to have any connection with Captain Marvel related to the character to have any connection with LGBT. The actor who played Shazam in the Adventures of Captain Marvel serial had been involved in a silent movie of Oscar Wilde's Salome, which according to legend was cast entirely of homosexuals in tribute to Oscar Wilde, the writer. Of course, almost everybody in Hollywood at that time was gay, so it's hard to ascertain the determination of it, but also mar-vell hooked up with a Skrull princess during the Kree-Skrull War. Their son is Teddy Altman, Hulkling of the Young Avengers, who is the boyfriend of Wiccan, who had changed his name from Asgardian for some reason. But anyway, moving right along, and all this was happening while Xena and Gabrielle were doing their thing on TV, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Willow had her girlfriend. So lesbians were a popular thing in the media at the time. Moving right along, where are we up to? We got 3 Shazam Captain Marvels. We got genis-vell, we got phyla-vell. Phyla-vell changed the name to Quasar, and then Martyr. Meanwhile, an alternate dimension Kree named noh-var survived a crash on Earth. He became Marvel Boy. Who remembers the Secret Invasion? Okay, before I'm going to get to what happened to noh-var in a second. The Secret Invasion was Skrulls disguised as superheroes. The first, and not just disguised, genetically altered to think that they're the Earth humans. One of them, the first one that worked, went too far, and he was Captain Mar-vell, Captain Marvel. He went too far, they couldn't bring him out of being Captain Marvel, so he just stayed at Captain Marvel. His name was Knur. And he eventually died battling Skrulls, and he flamed to Earth and died in the arms of noh-var. The next day, Harry Osborn shoots the Skrull King, or General, or whatever, becomes a hero, fires the Avengers, creates the Dark Avengers, and says, noh-var, you're our new Captain Marvel. We're up to 8? Yes. Okay. He lasted a little bit. He quit when he saw what was going on, that the Dark Avengers were really bad, and he became the Protector. Meanwhile, genis-vell fought this Hista, this alien prehistoric snake-like creature from another planet who was named Captain Marvel, so we're up to 9. Okay, in The Power of Shazam by Jerry Ordway, Mary Batson, when she said Shazam and she turned into a superhero, she didn't call herself Mary Marvel, she called herself Captain Marvel. She was just like, the Lady Captain Marvel, 10. All right. There was another Skrull who lasted for all of 1 issue, a slightly less perfect Captain Marvel, 11. And House of M. Now everybody knows that Carol Danvers is Marvel's Captain Marvel now. Who knows that she was Captain Marvel before now? Who remembers the House of M? In the world of the House of M, Carol Danvers, though being human, was the greatest hero in the world, Captain Marvel. She still had the Ms. Marvel lightning bolt black bathing suit, but she was the greatest hero in the world, and when the House of M closed down, she went back to being Ms. Marvel and said, gee, if I could be so great then, why can't I be great now? I find that kind of personally, I take that kind of personal because I say to myself, when I'm doing awesome things, like, for one thing, all of you guys are still here paying attention, even though it's just been me talking about comic books and Captain Marvels. I say, why can't I be this awesome all the time? Okay, now you're not laughing as much as I'd like you to, but you're still here. So I'm going to work with this here. So I just think of that. It's like, anytime I did something awesome, like fighting with the USA Knights at the World Championships in Medieval Armored Combat, I can say, why can't I work as hard for that as I did this? The Android experts are here. Now we're just going to wait for our zombie experts. I'll wrap this up.
They're shuffling over.
Okay, we got up to 10, right? 12? We got up to 12? I said there were 20. Ah, yes. Remember Next Wave, Agents of Hate? There was a character named the Captain in that. They went because there were no other Captain names available. They went through them all. He had been them all. He was Captain Marvel once. So that's 13. Oh, jeez. There's got to be some. Darn it. There's got to be. Knurr, noh-var, Ms. Marvel, Legacy. Let's see. Split. Did we count the split? Yes. Oh, crap. I've got it written down somewhere, but we're pretty much out of time. The point is that, well, there are alternate. Oh, yeah. Teddy Altman is Captain Marvel in some other dimension, so we got that. Who remembers Earth X, Universe X, and all that? Where Captain Marvel is dead and is also a 3-year-old child. I count that as a different Captain Marvel. So it just adds up. They're just coming out of the woodwork here. But the point is, I really haven't had time to go over the social and sociological and political implications and relevance of all these Captain Marvels, just because I'm trying to get through them in less than an hour. But you can name just about any social or political movement of the past 100 years and find a Captain Marvel that related. Even ask me about the anti-communist witch hunts of the 1950s and the pre-Skrull War. It's all in there. So now, I'm going to take a break. We're going to let the Aliens versus Zombies panel come in. If anybody would like to see all the details about what I've been talking about here, oh good, picture time, so I can hold up the sample of my product. There we go. These little red books are only $5. I've got 2 of them, put them together, they're 8. This is issue 1 and issue 2. Issue 3 is half done, so it's only $2. Put all 3 together, it's only 10. Step right this way. And
Issue 3 be all done?
What's that?
Issue 3 be all done?
I'm working on that, but in the meantime, if you want to know when I'm doing more lectures, if you want to get updates on the progress of the project, and if you want to help me go to agents and publishers and say, look how many people think the history of the many Captain Marvels is a cool thing and a story that needs to be told, come sign my mailing list. All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Aliens and zombies, androids and zombies coming up next. Thank you for coming to NY Wintercon. All right, so I pass this around. There we go. Okay. Thank you. Glad to be here for you. Okay.
I just noticed that too. Like this.
That'll take you from the dawn of time.
Three Stooges stand alike.
That'll take you up to about 2010. Okay, so that's 10 bucks.
This is going to have the robots versus.
The lightest got the real.
Okay,
That's
starting up in a couple.
It's better out there.
Thank you very much. I saw you were with me.
These scary characters.